clearly. However, if you're looking for a wealth manager, then you're looking for someone who's interested in your well being. That's a very, very important thing I just said.
Why do I dedicate my life to helping families survive from generation to generation? I told them, I don't do what I do because of the 85%. I do what I do because of that 15% or that 1%.
And aren't they worthy of our help? Worthy, a very important word. Why? Because they're exercising free will to do something very difficult, and that is add a little energy every day to just more than slightly compensate for the energy they lose.
Welcome to Business in Families, the podcast where family legacy meets leadership challenges. I'm Alex Mendez, a family enterprise advisor with over 18 years of experience helping business families worldwide navigating the complexities of generational transition, governance, and how they can professionalize themselves. In each episode, you will hear real stories, hard decisions, and valuable lessons from families who, like yours, are working to build trust, grow their companies, and preserve their legacy across generations. If something here resonates with your family or your business, and you'd like to explore it more deeply, I'm here to help you. Today, I have the extraordinary privilege of speaking with James E.J. Hughes, a true elder in the field of family enterprise, a sixth-generation attorney and pioneer of multigenerational family thinking. Jay has spent over 50 years studying, guiding, and writing about the dynamics that help family thrive beyond generations. He invites us to reflect on the proverb, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeve in 3 generations, and offers a radical idea. Some families survive because they choose to, through shared purpose, not shared blood. In this conversation, we explore the meaning of true wealth, the power of affinity over lineage, and the quiet daily decisions that build enduring legacies. Let's begin. Thank you for taking the time and enjoying your coffee here. It's been over 50 years that you began your journey helping families tackle the challenges of transcending from one generation to the other one. Take me to the past, to 50 years ago, let me a little bit about your journey. How did it begin, and why do you get excited about family businesses?
Alex, first, it's such a joy to be sharing this with you this morning. Thank you for inviting me. My good friend, it's a pleasure to share this journey with you.
Thank you.
Alex, I'm the 6th-generation lawyer in my family, so I'm going to go even further back than 50 years. My father was an international lawyer who helped families around the world for many, many years, and I was privileged to be his student for a while and then his partner. And so I always feel when I'm asked that question, I'm sitting on his shoulders like I was when I was a little boy. And I would say I'm still sitting on his shoulders, thank goodness. But I would say that the interesting story is this. I started to practice law in New York City in 1967. And that's a very, very long time ago.
A while ago.
And about 7 years in, so I'll start there. That would be 50 years. It's interesting the way you asked the question. I was sitting in my office in New York, very quietly, trying to keep my head down because the partnership vote in the law firm was to take place 2 weeks later. And you want very carefully, if you can, to stay out of the way of doing anything stupid that might, in the last moment, have the partners decide you're not worthy. So a young partner came into my office, Alex, and he said, Jay, on next Saturday, this was Tuesday, I would like you to meet me at JFK Airport and fly to Singapore. I said, why? I've never been there. And I said, why? What is this about? And he said, yeah, we have a client there, wants to meet you. And I said, well, what does he want? We said, I don't know. He said, what? He said, yeah, he wants to see you, and we don't know why. So I said he didn't have a passport, which was true. But in those days, you could walk up to Fifth Avenue and get a passport, so I did. So Saturday morning, Alex, I got on the plane, flew to Singapore, no 747s, pressed and planed forever and forever, forever. I got to Singapore about 30 hours later. I'd never been anywhere in Asia and no idea what it was like. And I met the partner, resident partner there, and I said, Gage, why did this man want me to come? And he said, I don't know. I said, what? He said, I don't know. I said, but well, who is he? He says, a big, big taipan here in Singapore.
Mhm.
I said, oh my God. So the next morning, I got up, went to this building, 17 stories on Singapore, went up to the top story, and there was a wall and a secretary, a wall, no, nothing, and a door. So I said, I'm Mr. You're expected. Go through that door. So I went through the door and came into a huge office. It was the whole top floor of the building, which it turned out he owned. And I had to walk, Alex, what was like a 2 hectare field that was probably about 20 feet to a tiny chair. And his chair was up 2 levels, little tiny chair. That's it. It was couches way far away. So I went and sat in the chair and I thought, well, and he said, would you like tea? I said, yes. He said, would you like a cigar? I said, yes, even though I didn't smoke, but I knew he was in the business of tobacco. And finally he said, you wonder why I invited you here? I said, yes, I do. He said, well, we Chinese have a proverb. I thought they have thousands. He said, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations.
Mhm.
And I blurted out, well, we had that in my family. And he said, you did? He said, I want you to tell me what my I can do for my 3 sons so we don't have that proverb come true in our family. Will you tell me what the great families in the West do?
Mhm.
And I said, frankly, sir, I have no idea. But I said, he said, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, but I was feeling better now because you remember how anxious I was walking into
Yeah.
that little chair. I've never been so anxious in my life. So I said to him very boldly, he's still a very young lawyer, um, may I come back in 6 months, of course, on his invitation, and tell you the answer? So, Alex, 6 months later to the day, I arrived. I didn't worry anymore about getting there or getting in the elevator or going through the wall or anything. And he said, Mr. Hughes, have you got the answer? I said, Mr. So and so, I don't. Oh, he said, I said, however, I can tell you that in this 6 months, I have discovered that every culture on earth that's ever existed has the proverb in some form. He said, what? I said, yes, it turns out this is the common human condition. He said, well, will you help me avoid it? And I said, yes, and some families do avoid it, not many,
Mhm.
but some. And I said, I'll tell you what else I've learned. And so then I finished the answer to this question. He said, what I've learned is this. In big physics, I don't expect any of our listeners ever took a physics course, but I think they know this. In big physics, there's a principle that governs our universe, so we're all part of it, and that is energy, which makes up this universe, has a tiny bit of matter in it. It's kind of a miracle that there's any matter at all, but it's basically energy in a different form. So if you think about the genesis of a family, that's what happens. Two people have an energy together, they make matter, they make a family. Here's the principle of our universe, however, and that is something called entropy,
Mhm.
entropy, or the second law of thermodynamics. Forget what I just said,
Mhm.
which basically says in this universe, anything that becomes matter, this universe wants to go back to energy.
Mhm.
That is an absolute rule of our universe. So the proverb defines big physics in social terms of
Mhm.
families and communities. So it's perfectly natural. It's just not very pleasant.
Mhm.
It's perfectly natural. So I have spent my life, Alex, dealing with that proverb, trying to help families avoid the proverb. Now you're going to ask me, what did you learn? What could I have said to that Chinese gentleman I wish I'd known 50 years ago? Well, first of
Mhm.
all, I can tell you I still don't know the answer to the question.
Mhm.
I do know one thing, however, and that is that the proverb is real. It's taking place in every family on the planet, except there are a few families, I won't tell you how few, but a few families that figure something very important out. They say, well, Mother Nature's rules, energy to matter to energy, will come true. Someday our family will disappear. However, Mr. Hughes, isn't it true that we have free will? We get to decide when. And that is absolutely true. So the per church matter will come true. Human beings have observed it in every culture on earth. Every family has free will as to when. And that's the secret.
Yeah, and there's gotta be the willingness to change things in terms of trying to transcend. I was giving a lecture yesterday in a town in the north of Mexico with about, I don't know, 15, 20 families, along with their
Mm.
parents and some of
Yes.
the kids. And I told them that, and we were talking about the figures, and that almost 80% of the first generation, in the first jump of the generation, they disappeared.
Yeah.
And so on, so on. In the second and the third generation, it's only 1% that is alive after 3 generations. And I tell them, you should think that why do I dedicate my life to helping families survive from generation to generation? I told them that is exactly why physicians, like oncologists, they dedicate themselves to saving that small percentage. It's worth
Yes.
dedicating your life. So
Yes.
I don't do what I do because of the 85%. I do what I do because of that 15% or that 1%
Eh,
in that
Right.
sense.
And aren't they worthy of our help? Worthy, a very important word. Why? Because they're exercising free will to do something very difficult, and that is add a little energy every day to the matter to just more than slightly compensate for the energy they lose. And isn't it our work? I believe it is our work to be cheering that little bit of energy that gets added.
Yeah, and we when you have the opportunity to live through that small steps that some families they do through that journey of trying to survive from one generation to the other,
Yes.
it is worthy. Let me go back
Yes.
about I don't know 18, 20 years ago when I began my journey in this field,
Right.
trying to help families after I sold my company because I couldn't make the transition to the next generation and I failed.
Right.
I had the opportunity to meet you and reading one of your books that, by the way, 50 years ago, I don't know if you had already written a book, but
No.
it's incredible somebody from Singapore reached out to you all the way to the States because there was no WhatsApps or no internet or no nothing about that stuff. So somebody told him that there's somebody over in the States that can figure out
Right.
the question. But going back to my remark in that sense, reading one of your books, it shocked me the meaning of wealth. And
Yeah.
how do you define, because you're the one that define it, the different types of capital?
Yeah.
I would like you to share with the audience, because I use it with every family that I work with, and I quote you in that sense. What do you mean, and what's the meaning of wealth? Because I think it would be very, very interesting for the audience to acknowledge it.
Thank you. Well, let me start by saying what you and I know, and that is that the word wealth, in its English definition, goes back, interestingly, to 450 AD when the Germans came to England. So the beginning of English is the German language and what the English people and the Latin and Roman agglomerated became English, what we call English. At that time, there were two words in their language spelled Weol, weol. You hear weolf? Weolf. That word And in every dictionary until maybe 30 or 40 years ago, the word wealth only meant one thing, Alex, well being. That's what it means. And that's what it means today. Advertising, and then I'll get to the capitals very carefully when I come at it this way. The advertising industry for financial firms have taken a term that has nothing to do with their businesses. They're financial capital movers and said they call themselves wealth managers. They are not wealth managers. They're financial capital intermediators. I'm using big words, but everybody understands them.
It is what it is.
It's clearly. However, if you're looking for a wealth manager, then you're looking for someone who's interested in your well being. That's a very, very important thing I just said. Huh. Now, how do you know they're interested in their well being? Which is Alex's question to me. Well, first of all, if you think about your family's balance sheet, your balance sheet, you have qualitative capital and quantitative capital. Let me assure you that Mother Nature hopes that you will forget the qualitative capital, look only at the quantitative capital, and stick your thumb up in the air and wiggle it. Because if you do that, she wins immediately. There's no free will. You're done. Finish. Get out the big game. If you see yourself only as quantitative, only as money, you're finished. It's over. Game's over. Go play some other game. Now, if you want to take that qualitative part of your balance sheet, what does it consist of? Spiritual capital, social capital, intellectual capital, and human capital supported by financial capital. Financial in the ground, it's growing. But what's its purpose? Oh, purpose. Oh, spiritual purpose. Reason for being is to grow these. Huh. So this is death. Mother Nature wins. The matter goes back to energy. Boom, entropy is in place. Or you can say, well, wait a minute. Let me look at my qualitative balance sheet, supported by my quantitative balance sheet. And am I growing my spiritual, social, intellectual, and human selves? Because if I am, I'm going to find the free will question. I'll discover it. I'll say, I like this. This is fun. I'm actually doing something fun. I'm actually growing the parts of our family that, of course, are most important. But Mother Nature's she's careful. She doesn't want you to know that.
Although it's interesting to see that now nowadays in the 20th century, 21st century, is that we have all this knowledge about what had worked with families along the years to survive. But I had the opportunity about 2 months ago to get together with a family that's been along, I would say, 500 years. It's an Italian family. Had the opportunity to meet which is now the chairman of the board of that company. Mm-hmm. And at that time, there was no books or knowledge on how to do and how to transcend from one generation to the other one. And I told in my lecture a couple of days ago that say, remember that we have to have the willingness and to maintain harmony, and with love and goodwill, you will survive.
Yes.
But nowadays you have a lot more tools which say these are the 5 or 6 things that families around the world have done that have a better chance to survive. So now you have a much better chance. So in those terms, Jay, what has been the key aspect that you've seen in families around the world, because you've worked with families around the world, that have not done their homework and have took them to the journey of failure? What are the key things that they don't do until we get to the things that the families they do have a better chance?
Well, let me tell you what the first trap is. The first trap is to think of themselves as blood rather than a group of affinity.
Hmm.
That's death. So if you hear a family, you're trying to help them, and they start talking about their blood, they're done because that's simply not true. It's not true. There is no such blood. There's DNA that we share, but blood, my dear friend, is only good if you're in the emergency room hemorrhaging. Then it matters whether anybody else there has your type of blood. The core basis of any family is the Genesis act of affinity, positive connection between two people, which they then seek to increase to those who join the family. So that's the first thing. Blood or affinity. That's absolute. If you don't like each other, if you're not interested in positively enhancing each other's lives, then you're going to die by inertia very quickly, cold. It's not going to do what you need to do. What's the second thing? Back to heat again, right to heat. That's cold.
Hmm.
Are you a welcoming family or not? Oh, is that important? Oh, is that important? So if we sit and say, oh, those outlaws, those people who are trying to steal from us, done, cold, done. If we're a welcoming family, understanding that our future depends upon who elects to join us, because they might prefer to have our family member join them. Oh, now we're in a good dance, aren't we?
Hmm.
Oh, we're in a good dance. We're doing a beautiful dance with a great mariachi band teaching us to sing and laugh. But if we're sitting there saying, oh boy, those people are the problem, we're done. Stop. Go home. The party ended. You never had a party. Those are two things right off the bat that matter enormously. Then the third is, are you seeking to grow your money or are you seeking, what we talked about a minute ago? That's number three. And I would say those three are so far larger than everything else, that's where I'll stop. And so the great families around the world that I've been privileged to help in that group that have discovered that they have free will, it's going to happen. Entropy is going to happen. How do they act? They welcome me, not as some lawyer with technical skills, but a nice person, I hope, who will be respectful and try to help them. Completely different. By the way, I spent the first half of my career dealing with taxes and creditors,
Hmm.
which is what a lot of founders are worried about. And it was terrible life. It wasn't good for them, it wasn't good for me. The second half of my life I've spent asking how can I help? And the core questions of help is are you stuck on blood or do you understand affinity? What is the Genesis act? It's an act of affinity. Can you grow it? Can you grow what it is special about your act of affinity? Are you welcoming or not? Are you growing your qualitative selves or not? These are not, these are clear statements. I'm not making any funny stuff or technical stuff. I'm speaking to the human condition.
And taking things a step forward. So when you find, and we have the privilege to find a family that is willing to grow and
Yes.
treasures their capital in order, in that sense, I've found that one of the key things is how do they develop the skills of communication to build trust.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And going forward in
So,
that sense is also that things change in time and in life, and the rules that were applying at the beginning of when they began the business, it was 20 years ago or 500 years ago. You have to rewrite the new rules of engagement in that sense. Would that be something else have you seen that can help families tackle the challenges?
well, let me come back to the hand gesture for the moment.
Hmm.
Spiritual capital, purpose is on top. And without getting further into that, I will simply say that families that understand their purpose is to enhance each other's journeys of happiness do very well. I want to say that again. Families whose purpose is to enhance each other's journeys of happiness, each other's helping.
Hmm.
The second finger is social capital, the ring finger. I don't mean philanthropy. I mean, can you make good joint decisions? This is the key to communications.
Hmm.
What do I mean by good and governance, by the way, these two big words? Forget them. For the moment, let's ask our friends who are listening to us to just understand that by definition, words again matter, a family must be two or more people. So you can have a single person household, but you cannot, under any language in the world, have a family that isn't at least two people, right?
Yeah.
All right. So as soon as we agree that we're dealing with families, not individuals, we are dealing with a social system. And that social system says two people or more have to make joint decisions. I don't know that anybody volunteers automatically to give up their freedom to make a joint decision.
It's tough.
Now, I will say that when the baby is born, the moms out there will like this. In the first year of life, the baby makes all the decisions for the dyad with the mother. But it's a joint decision making system, right?
Hmm.
Okay. So the core question is, are you thriving human beings? Are you in intellectual capital? Are you a deep, deep learning system in which you're sharing what you learn so that the human beings that are thriving and the information that they're learning together comes to the decision making place? And that I can trust you that you did your homework. Now, I just said something. What did I mean when I said that? Can I trust you to do your homework? Well, first, I have to know who you are. And second, that you got the material. Ah, here's a hint. If you have a family, let's say there's 10 members of it, just for the moment, mothers, old grandparents, children, whatever. Alex, in that group of 10, there will be at least two, if not three, different learning styles. Different learning styles. That group will have different ways of learning.
Hmm.
Okay, the critical thing, as I said earlier this morning, is joint decision making over at least 100 years, because that only gets you halfway to the third generation. Incrementally adding energy to the matter to make up for what you're losing and a little more. So here's a very practical question on communication, which is never asked. It's assumed that you take a course on communication, but it doesn't assume how you learn. So most of the time, it doesn't work at all. If, on the other hand, you start your journey before you get out on the road, by the way, you start your pause, you say, we're going to learn something together, which all those 500-year families did do. They paused, they didn't just keep running. And you find out how each other learns. Guess what? When it comes to the joint decision making system, I now can trust you, not because I didn't trust you, but I can trust you that you're coming to the decision the way you learned the material. Now comes the second question. Do your family offices or whoever it is who serves you before those decisions are made, did they present the material to you the way you learn it best? Oh, now I'm coming to the joint decision making system, likely to be able to make a pretty good decision. I may still dislike you intensely. I'm teasing, but I can make a joint decision with you because I've gotten them. I know you know how I learn. I know how you learn. We each got the material in the way we could best assimilate it. We could best take it in. We could best learn it. Well, isn't it likely we're going to make better decisions? See, the issue for these families is they know each other intensely. intimately, in not in the sexual sense, in an intimate way of how you learn, because I've made a decision to enhance your life. I'm in. I'm in the spiritual capital.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to make decisions with you. So who the hell are you? Excuse my English. And did we get the material in the way we can best assimilate it? We can best learn it. Because this is the critical one, the social capital, the joint decision making. And I'll say one more thing here. There's a tremendous amount of wasted time on governance, huge amounts of money spent on boxes and rules and organization. And of course, they don't work. There are some architects, lawyers, bankers, some architects' view of what's good for you. But the problem is they don't come with the rules of how to be in the system. You get a system, but you can't make it work. To be in a system of governance of work, you have to know each other. You have to
And
be
trust
willing
each
to,
other.
yeah, and trust each other and be ready to help each other's well-beings,
Yeah.
wealth.
Let me add something to the equation that we think
Please.
we're missing here, and you begin with the spiritual capital, which is this one,
Yes.
uh, but that spiritual capital and defines what is going to be your purpose. But
Yes.
before the purpose, I would say you have to define which are those values that we share together,
Yes.
and but others that we don't. But we're here together, willingly, to make this better decisions together. So every time I talk to a family, I say, let's begin by defining our values,
Mm-hmm.
and what is going to be our mission and our vision for the future as a family before the
Mm-hmm.
business.
Yes.
The business is a lot more simple for me. There's more structure, processes, and that would be something a lot not as simple as I say so, but it's much more simple that dealing with the dynamics of the families in those sense. So in your experience, Jay, what can you share in terms of stories of some families that have gone through this journey of defining their core values and defining a vision and mission as a family to define their purpose in life?
Alex, let me suggest this for a moment. You are thinking of values, but you're really thinking of virtues. I'm an old-fashioned person. I had a classical education, as it was in the 1960s. That doesn't exist anymore. We actually had to learn Latin. We had to do a lot of things that are hard, and students aren't asked to do those things anymore. I'm not making a speech. That's the world we live in. Um, if we were having this conversation in 1964, when I was a senior at college, we'd be having a conversation about virtues. Why am I using that word instead of values? Well, the problem of values, value study is great. I'm not suggesting it isn't. But values come out of science and they're measurable. I can evaluate, so I can measure something. Virtues cannot be measured. You are
Interesting.
just or you're not. You're courageous or you're not. You're empathetic or you're not. The great conversations, the moral conversations, we're up at spiritual capital now. The great moral conversations of the West and the East, by the way, this is where the whole world has the similar patterns, have been about what are the great virtues? What are the things that a human being can imagine and do that have led to good lives? So I'm not caviling with the word value, as I'm not pushing back against it. I'm rather saying that I think the families are actually having virtues conversations. And virtues, I want to say again, you can't measure. See, value includes, I'm saying it the second time on purpose so our audience can make the distinctions I'm making. Values can be measured, they can be evaluated. Virtue cannot. You are or you aren't. So, what I've tried to do with families, and they do values exercises, they're perfectly good, but I really try to get them into a conversation about virtues. One of which, by the way, is very, very important and isn't in the values list usually.
Mhm.
Do you know how to forgive? That's a virtue and of huge importance to those 500-year families.
Okay.
If you really ask them, do you trust? They say, yes, of course I trust. I do trust, not and verify, as Ronnie Reagan said. No, I trust you. But I also know as a human being, you'll break my heart. So, do we have a virtue of forgiveness? Not that you're entitled to be forgiven, but does the family have a virtue of forgiveness? Because we're going to make mistakes. That's a virtue, isn't it?
It is.
It's a very, this is not difficult. This is actually how human beings living together in families, in clans, in tribes have governed themselves. They include the realities of the human experience because they've observed them. And again, if I come all the way back to Singapore, and then I'll come back to you this way, if I was saying today to that Chinese gentleman, what I've learned, it is how fascinating it is in a field called social anthropology or social psychology. These are two different sciences, modern sciences, but how fascinating it is to see how human beings have observed each other through all of written history and then prehistory. So that prehistory is before writing, how we have observed each other and what are the virtues or values that we have observed actually lead to a good life.
Yeah. And trying to get to a conclusion, because we can keep on talking for hours, you and me. And I'm going to ask you that give you another chance to tackle other challenges and other concepts that I have on my mind in another podcast, another episode of the podcast. But if you have to make some recommendations in your experience of what should families do that are in the avoidance of not making the changes they have to make to transcend. Let me elaborate on that. I talk to many families and I give a lot of lectures like you do, and you always see they're nodding, yes, 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 and at the end say, so what are you going to do different in order to have a different outcome in that sense? So what would you recommend those families that are avoiding to make a different thing, to begin the journey of trying to make the transcendence to the next 10, 15, 20, 50 years in their lives?
Well, let me say a couple of things. This is such a very, very important question, and I don't want anyone in the audience to think I have an answer. I don't, but I will offer some observations, if I may. All human communities know that their future depends upon growing elders. All, not olders, elders. Becoming an elder is giving up all the things you have done to become interested in the whole. I can say, Alex, that many, many failures are that the founder, as we call him or her, cannot make the transition to becoming an elder. There are many, many reasons for that, and my heart is very open and compassionate to the feelings of someone who has taken energy and made it matter, which is frankly a godlike act. I'm not blaspheming. That shouldn't be possible. So that's a remarkable thing. So the second great question for that person is, can he or she make the change that will be so beneficial to them to become an elder, which is selfless, it's interest in the whole, all the boats rising. To ask somebody, says, what do you mean? I said, well, are you interested in all the boats of your family rising, not yours? You might be interested in yours, but only after, says the elder, I've looked at every other boat and how it's doing. That's a hugely important thing. Very often, That isn't possible. And so the question for those families is in the second generation, can they grow an elder? And by the way, if someone else asks me, they often do, how do you define an elder? It's leadership. I say, well, the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu perhaps said it better than anybody else. The great elder is the one who is the leader, whose followers say we did it ourselves.
Hmm.
Remember, there's a leader, there's an elder, but it's the followers that isn't that subtle, but it's magnificent. That's how great families function, by the way. There's not a leader in front who's on a horse with a sword.
Hmm.
There's a gentle person wearing robes, perhaps back, who's saying, let's get all the boats rising. Oh, so that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is that family actually begins in the second generation in terms of joint decisions. That does not mean that there's not a Genesis generation. Of course there is. That's the beginning. And it doesn't mean that the opinions of those people are not hugely important. They are. But they're usually not making joint decisions. It's the siblings and their spouses in the second generation who develop the joint decision making system.
Along with the first generation, because when they have the
Always.
opportunity,
But only if the first generation is willing to say,
of course.
and by the way, this is very subtle, Alex, can say, I'm actually not interested in doing that. Will you do that? Because that's exactly what our family needs. But don't ask me
To do
because
it.
I'm going to want you to take my opinion,
Hmm.
which is fine. It's very good. But if you're an elder, you wait for the other's opinions. You see the difference?
Of course.
Okay. Um, I would also say this: those 500-year families have at least 10 times, if not, let's say 5 times, 10's too many, had some kind of event attack them from outside. And they have had a fabric strong enough to survive that attack. That comes from this question, how can I help you? How can I help you? Because when that event occurs, you need to really be able to trust each other. And a lot of families, when they're in the first, second, and third generation, haven't yet had that kind of attack. But my father used to say that all families' issues are political in the sense that in the end, the state wants to eat you. He used to talk about cats and mice. Families that understand their mice in a world of cats do very, very well. The ones who are looking only at the cheese,
They don't do.
not so well.
It's like those families that only focus in the financial capital
They're
and
dead.
growing it
They're
because
done.
the rest they're not taking care of that.
No, they're done. They're. I'm sorry, but to say that Mother Nature wins those games, right? She says, "Good for you. You're right back to entropy, right back to the energy body."
Hmm.
So perhaps that's enough. There are more things I could say, but I think the most important one is, and I'll come back to it this way: is the family doing the natural development of each human being's stage of life, supporting each stage of life's questions well? So asking a 25-year-old person who's just graduated from business school um, to have a position to develop the strategy for a 100-year-old company is just ridiculous. It's not because he or she isn't capable, it is they're thinking about other things. So if we say, well, I'm sorry, you have no choice, you've got to do, no choice, I'm out of here. So maybe Alex, it occurs to me to say one more thing. I think this is also important. I'm going to start working in my foundation in the next years with a question that's occurring all over the world, and that is as the abundance that's been created since World War II, enormous abundance, moves into the hands of the next two recipients, there's maybe 110, 120 trillion dollars. It says, I mean, it's just beyond imagination how much money all over the world.
That is changing hands in the next 10 to 15
Yes.
years.
Yeah. If I was to say to the audience, which I want to do now, again, what have I learned in 57 years? Coming back to Alex's wonderful beginning question. It occurred to me a few months ago, as I was in a conversation with myself, that I have had no client, no individual private client in 57 years who did not have an integration problem. Now, what do I mean? Integration, that's an interesting word. I wrote a book called The Cycle of the Gift
Mm.
with Keith and Susan. The theme of that book is that an inheritance or a significant gift is always a meteor from outer space into the life of the human being who receives it. Always. Always a meteor from outer. Has nothing to do with that person. Nothing. So every one, Alex, of the people I've helped over my lifetime had an integration problem. What do I do with this meteor? Not how do I spend it? How do I run it? No, no, no. What's happened to me? What has happened to me? I've received something from somebody else. And by the way, most people think the advisors think they receive money. These are the financial capital managers masquerading as money. No, no. I received something that is someone else. That's what I've received. What was my relationship to that person? Did I know them? Did I just like them? What what's happened to me? You've knocked me. You've sent something into my atmosphere, myself. I have to integrate it. And by the way, it's a lifetime sentence. Wow. No one cares about the individual's experience until we really begin to understand how powerful it is to receive a meteor from outer space. So if we look at these marvelous families and we look at the movements of financial capital, if they're just financial capital, we miss all that's going on with the family member in the transition. So I'll end this question and this way. I love metaphors of biology. And it occurred to me and some of my colleagues, Alex, some time ago, that you and I do our great work when the family crab is a soft shell crab. It knew how to do things when it was a hard shell crab,
Yep.
but it doesn't know all that it needs to know as a soft shell crab. And it's prey, Prey. So we do our great work, my friend, and would say to the audience, if you're looking for an advisor, look for Alex who will stand with you when your family's a soft shell crab, growing transformationally to the shell it needs for the next stage. But we must be really empathetic and sympathetic, both words, to that stage of its life. And we must be equally empathetic and sympathetic to the person who receives the meteor. And no, just way too often this isn't seen. So again, if I went back to the beginning, as you asked me to do, I wish I had seen that so clearly. I was experiencing it with each client, but I didn't have the words for it. And now my sympathy and empathy for each of those persons is even greater than it was because I realize how hard that is to do.
Yeah, one of the things that I more cherish in what I do now in my career is when I have the privilege to see these families flourish and begin to make joint decisions.
Yep.
Because the challenges are going to be there, and it's going to be a bumpy
Yes.
road in the future. It's not going to be easy, but at least they're begun their journey. I want to thank you, Jay, for taking the time to share this with me. But I want to leave a topic for the next episode.
Good. I'd like a next
That
episode.
is a word that has been bothering me in my head to try to find the answer, which I don't have.
Hmm.
Each, what is legacy?
Ah,
And going and that journey of questioning myself, what's going to be my legacy, and but what is legacy by itself, began when you gave me the book as a gift, the cycle of the gift. I remember several years ago we were having coffee
I
in this
remember it so well.
little bookstore over in Aspen, Colorado, where you live. I was with my wife.
Right.
We were struggling and what to
Yep.
give my young daughter in that sense. And you gave me the book. And he says, every time you give a gift, give a meaning to the gift and explain it to that. So I'm going to
Yep.
give you that. I'm going to give the audience with those things, well, thoughts, and see. We'll have another conversation with Jay Hughes. Thank you for having this stuff and thank you for sharing all your knowledge and your love with us. Thank you, Jay.
Incredible privilege. Namaste.
Namaste,
Bye-bye.
my friend. Jay Hughes' wisdom offers lessons that every family should reflect on. That true wealth is not just financial, but includes spiritual, human, intellectual, and social capital. That families endure not because of blood, but because of affinity and the willingness to grow together. That shared purpose is what gives meaning and protection to any legacy. That trust is built by honoring each other's learning styles and communicating with care. That harmony is preserved when families continuously revisit and adapt their shared values. If any of these resonates with your story or your company and would like to explore how to apply these lessons in your own family business, I would be happy to talk. Follow us on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast. And share this episode with anyone building a lasting legacy, because generational continuity isn't an accident. It's a choice we make every day. See you in the next episode.